The storm closed in fast. Orders clashed over the radio. The mission stalled. Jets circled low on fuel, lost in the fog that swallowed the base. Inside the tower, voices rose and fell, no plan holding longer than a breath. At the edge of the room, Ava listened. No one called on her. No one noticed her. But she saw what they did not. She reached for the mic, her hand steady. When the jets touched down, hers was the voice they had followed through the storm. The air at the Ironwood Air Base felt heavy, thick with the weight of humidity and the charge of ozone that always came before a storm. The scent of fuel mixed with the metallic tang of rain waiting just beyond the hills. Wind gusts pushed the heat in restless waves, lifting dust along the tarmac and carrying it to the base of the tower where Ava sat at her station. Through the tall windows, the world seemed to blur at the edges, the horizon smudged by haze and the first low clouds that gathered beyond the jagged silhouette of the mountains. Inside the tower, the glow of consoles and blinking radar screens cast shifting light on faces lined with habit and confidence. The senior controllers leaned over displays, their voices casual, trading jokes about the exercise unfolding beyond the glass. Ava's headset rested light against her ears, the soft hum of the room blending with the background chatter of pilots checking in, flight data scrolling past in green and amber. She kept her focus steady, eyes moving between the radar blips and the slow advance of fog that crept up the valley floor like a rising tide no one else seemed to see. One of the controllers, a man with silver hair and the ease of long service, glanced her way with a grin that did not reach his eyes. There she goes again, logging every breeze like it is going to change the mission. Another laughed, tapping the console nearest Ava. Careful, or she'll chart wind speed for coffee runs next. The group chuckled, the sound low and confident, the kind of humor that came from those who believed they had seen all storms before. Ava said nothing. She kept her gaze on the valley, where the fog thickened in slow layers, curling between the folds of land and blurring the edges of the terrain she knew by heart. The storm clouds above darkened in steady measure, the kind that signaled not a quick squall, but a long, grinding siege of wind and rain. The radar showed what the eye could not yet see, faint echoes where the air turned dense enough to reflect the sweep of the dish. She logged the readings, her hand steady, her notes precise, the data forming a quiet map no one asked for. The F16s lifted off in sequence, their afterburners flaring against the storm's edge, twin streaks of orange and heat cutting through the thickening haze. The radio carried the clipped voices of the pilots, confident and clear, as they climbed into the sky for the intercept drill. The lead controller leaned back in his chair, watching the blips on the radar trace their arc outward. "No need for worry," he said, loud enough for the room. "They'll be back before that fog of hers reaches the fence line." He waved a hand as if brushing aside a gnat. "Ava, relax. This is not a weather seminar." Ava's fingers brushed the edge of her headset, adjusting it slightly, grounding herself in the familiar weight of it. She tuned out the laughter, the easy dismissal. Her focus stayed on the data, the way the fog edged closer, the way the wind began to shift in small ways that mattered to those who listened. She marked the backup beacons in her mind, their positions fixed along ridges and clearings forgotten in modern flight plans, but still there for those who needed them. She traced fallback vectors on her notepad, angles and altitudes that could save fuel, save time, save lives. Though no one watched her work. The room felt warm, the heat of machines and bodies held close by the sealed glass. Outside, the wind gusted harder, rattling the thin edge of the window frame. The storm built itself layer by layer, patient and sure, a force that would not be rushed, but would not be denied. Ava glanced once more at the valley. The fog moved faster now, as if the storm's breath pushed it on, filling low places, swallowing landmarks. It blurred the line between field and forest, between safe ground and hazard. She saw it all, and made note. the quiet keeper of details unseen by the room around her. The senior controllers continued their rhythm, voices smooth, hands moving across keyboards and dials with practiced ease, the air filled with the sound of check-ins, course updates, altitude calls, the noise of normal operations. It was easy, from where they sat, to believe the storm would pass like any other. It was easy to trust the plan, the charts, the lines on the screen. Ava listened, but her mind held the map of the land as it was now, shaped by fog and wind and the weight of air thick with rain. One of the controllers leaned back, stretching, his voice light with humor. If she keeps watching that fog, she'll scare it off with her notes. The others laughed again, easy and full, sure of themselves. Ava let the sound wash over her. Her eyes stayed on the valley. Her hand moved to her notepad, adding one more mark, one more calculation. The storm gathered, and she was ready. Outside, the first drops of rain struck the glass, the sound soft but steady, the promise of what was to come. The wind shifted again, bringing with it the full scent of ozone and wet earth. The F-16s climbed beyond the ridge, their forms lost to sight, only their voices and radar traces left to mark their place in the world. The storm waited, the fog rose, and Ava, unseen, prepared for what the others did not yet see. The greatest readiness was not in loud command. It lived in the quiet work, the steady hand, the mind that mapped the storm before it broke. Ava watched, listened, and waited. The storm was coming. She was ready. The storm strengthened with a speed that caught even the most experienced eyes off guard. What had begun as a bank of clouds hanging over the mountains now pushed down into the valley with the force of a living thing. The wind came in hard, shearing across the ridgelines, bending trees that lined the far field. Fog rolled with it, thick and fast, filling the low ground and swallowing the landmarks that had marked the pilot's bearings only minutes before. The valley floor vanished beneath a blanket of gray that deepened with every breath. Inside the control room, the shift was felt first as a hum of uncertainty. The senior controllers straightened, their easy rhythm faltering as radar screens flickered and radio static crept in at the edges of the pilots' voices. The blips that marked the two F-16s wavered on the displays, their tracks jittering as the storm played havoc with the signal. "The storm is building faster than the models," one controller muttered, voice tight with disbelief. Another shook his head, fingers dancing over keys, trying to pull clearer data from systems straining under the pressure. The radio crackled, carrying the clipped tones of the lead pilot. "Base, this is Falcon 1. Request immediate vectors home. Fuel status low." Holding pattern burned more than expected. His voice, so confident at departure, now carried an edge of tension. A beat later, the second pilot came through, his words nearly lost in a burst of static. "Falcon 2. Same here. Fuel critical. Visibility near 0. Need headings." The control room grew louder, voices overlapping as controllers debated heading options and descent paths. The storm's rapid advance had closed off standard return routes. The fog hid terrain that would have been safe in clear air. One suggested a wide loop east. Another argued for a direct line through the valley. The radar screens failed to give a clear answer, their images blurred by the storm's interference. Outside, the wind rattled the window frames, the sound sharp and constant, as if the storm itself demanded attention. Ava listened, her heart steady despite the growing pressure in the room. Her eyes moved between the fading radar returns and the valley she had watched all day. In her mind, she traced the ridgelines, the contours of the land now hidden from view. She noted the position of the old beacons, the safe altitudes that could guide the jets through if only someone would give the word. The tension around her rose like the storm, but within her there was only focus. She saw the pieces of disaster aligning, the choices narrowing. The radio burst to life again. Falcon 1, disoriented, instruments unreliable, need vector. His voice was sharp now, Urgency clear. Falcon 2's report followed, fuel at fumes, voice tight with fear. The room fell into a kind of controlled chaos. Controllers snapping out orders that overlapped or contradicted, trying to piece together solutions faster than the storm would allow. Faces that had been relaxed in confidence were drawn now, pale under the shifting glow of the screens. The tools they trusted most failed them. Radar, unreliable. Visual markers gone. The storm exposed what overconfidence had hidden. Outside, the fog pressed against the base like a living wall. The runway lights were halos of blurred color, lost beyond a few dozen yards. The storm's wind moaned across the tarmac, rain driving in sheets that made the world beyond the glass a shifting haze of gray. The plan had failed, and now only preparation remained. Ava kept her voice steady, her thoughts clear. She checked the altitude bands she had mapped out earlier in the day, remembered the breaks in the terrain where the land fell away enough for a safe descent. Her hands hovered near the headset controls, waiting for the right moment, the point where choice would no longer belong to those who had waited too long to act. The fog was the truth. No one in the room could deny. It erased arrogance as surely as it erased sight. The radar screens blinked again, the symbols of the jets flickering like ghosts caught between worlds. The lead controller snapped orders that changed from moment to moment, trying to match the reality he could no longer see. Voices rose, fell, collided. The room filled with sound but empty of direction. Ava breathed in, slow and sure, holding to the map in her mind, the storm beyond the glass, and the truth that in the end, only the prepared could guide the lost home. The storm raged on, the test that exposed what the room had not wanted to see, and Ava, steady and unseen, prepared to act. The storm gripped the airbase with all its force, shaking the tower with gusts that howled through the seams and battered the windows. Rain hammered the glass so hard it seemed the storm meant to breach the walls and drag the control room out into the night. The fog thickened beyond the glass, no longer a creeping tide but a wall, solid and impenetrable, that swallowed the field, the runway, the sky. The world beyond was lost in gray. Inside, the control room became its own storm of noise. Voices overlapped in rising confusion. Commands clashed, and the easy confidence that had filled the room only an hour before was gone. Radar screens flickered, the returns unstable, blips jittering and vanishing as the storm played with the signals. Falcon 1's voice came through the static, sharper now, the edge of fear clear. Base. We are losing altitude. Instruments unreliable. Request immediate vector. The radio hissed, crackled, and then Falcon 2 joined in. Tighter. The words nearly drowned in noise. Fuel critical. Disoriented. We need a heading. Now. The room froze for a second, just long enough for the weight of those words to sink in. Then the noise began again, louder than before, as senior controllers snapped out orders that contradicted one another. One man called for the jets to hold position until they could lock a stable signal. Another barked for a turn east, toward open ground that no one could see. A third argued for a descent path that the storm had already made dangerous. Fingers stabbed at keyboards, at radar controls, and at radios. Screens glowed, flickered, and glowed again, offering no clarity, like the storm had taken away their certainty, and the storm did not give it back. The pilots' voices rose above it all, calling for answers that did not come. Ava sat at her station, headset firm against her ears, hearing every word, every burst of static, every note of fear. She felt the storm's power in the way the tower shook, in the constant rattle of rain on the windows, in the way the wind moaned along the edges of the room like a warning. But inside, she was steady. Her mind traced the map of the valley, the hidden breaks in the ridges, the old beacon positions that the others had forgotten. She saw the safe paths, the altitudes that would clear the terrain, the angles that would guide the jets home. The noise of the room washed over her, but it did not touch the calm at her core. Falcon One's voice returned. Harder now, the control starting to slip. We are dropping fast. We need vectors. Say again. Where do you want us? Falcon 2 echoed him, fuel nearly gone, voice tight with strain. Give us a heading. The senior controller scrambled, their authority crumbling as their commands fell apart. The storm had stripped them of what they thought they owned. The plan had failed. The storm had taken it. All that was left was what came next. The lead controller turned toward Ava, frustration sharp in his voice, his authority fraying at the edges. Stay off the main frequency. Ava, let the team handle this. His words were meant to restore order, but there was no order left to claim. The pilots called again, the radio crackling with the force of their need. The controllers argued louder, each man's voice trying to rise above the others, but none of them offered a path that could hold. Ava breathed in deep, slow, steady, the storm's noise fading beneath the rhythm of her pulse, beneath the map she held in her mind. The fog pressed close, so thick now it seemed to push against the glass, a living thing that meant to blot out the lights of the base. The path home, the truth of the land beneath the jets. The storm howled, and the tower stood against it. But the choice had come. Leadership was not granted. It was taken in the moments when the need was clear, when no one else would move. Her fingers closed around the mic control, the headset warm against her skin, the tool of action that no longer waited for permission. She tuned out the voices behind her, the noise that no longer mattered. The storm had made its test. Ava answered. Her voice came through the chaos, calm, clear, measured. Falcon 1, adjust heading 045, climb to 6,000. You are clear to 9,000. Falcon 2, match heading, maintain altitude, fuel noted. I will bring you in. The storm roared on, but the center of the storm was here, in the voice that took command when no other voice could. Ava's voice filled the frequency with a clarity that cut through the storm's rage and the noise of the control room. Falcon 1, adjust heading 045, climb to 6,000. The terrain is clear beneath you. Her words came smooth and certain, carrying the weight of preparation, of the hours spent tracing every line of the valley in her mind. Falcon 2, match heading and altitude. You are safe at this band for the next 10 miles. Steady hands. The storm's fury could not drown her voice. It was the one clear thread that reached the jets as the world beyond the glass blurred into gray. There was a pause on the line, a breath's worth of hesitation. Falcon 1 answered first, the tension sharp at the edges of his tone. 045, climbing to 6,000. Copy. Falcon 2 followed, the strain in his voice plain but edged now with focus. Same heading, climbing, fuel still critical. His words held the weight of that truth, but they also carried trust. The path had been given, and it was a path they could follow. Outside, the storm battered the airfield. Rain hammered the tower's windows, each strike a reminder of the power pressing in from all sides. The wind howled around the structure, the sound of it filling every space, rattling the frames, pushing against the walls as if the storm meant to break through and claim the room inside. The fog thickened beyond the glass, a wall that erased sight, that left only memory and voice to guide the way. The senior staff protested behind her. Voices rose, tried to reassert command, but their words were part of the storm now, part of the noise that no longer mattered. Ava tuned them out, her focus locked on the work. The headset was warm against her ear, the weight of it grounding her, linking her to the pilots who depended on her. She called the next correction, voice steady, each word shaped by the map she held within. Falcon 1, ease left 2 degrees. Maintain rate of climb. Clear, corridor, ahead. Falcon 2, hold position relative. Fuel noted. No changes until I call them. The jets rocked under the storm's assault, turbulence slamming against their frames, wind shear biting at their wings. The radio crackled with the sound of it. The strain of engines pushed to the edge, but the pilots held to the path Ava marked. Falcon 1 reported the shift holding. The climb steady. Falcon 2 echoed. Fuel low, but course true. Their voices no longer carried panic. The storm still raged, but the way was clear. Ava worked without pause. Each command matched to the truth of the land beneath the storm, to the lines she had memorized, to the markers no one else remembered. The room around her fell quiet save for the storm, for the sound of the rain and the wind and the voice that now guided the mission. The senior staff stood still, their protest gone silent, their authority set aside by the simple force of what had to be done. The jets pressed on, each mile a test, each adjustment a step closer to home. Ava called the changes as they came. Falcon 1, prepare for descent to 5,000. Ridgeline clear at this heading. Falcon 2, mirror position. Fuel margin noted. Keep rate steady. Her voice was the one constant, the one point of order in the storm's chaos. The storm had made its test. The storm had set the stage. Ava met it with purpose, without fanfare, with the quiet certainty of one who had prepared for the moment no one else believed would come. The headset linked her to the work, to the pilots, to the storm. It was the tool of action, the bridge between thought and word, between courage and command. Outside, the rain fell harder still. The wind drove at the walls. The fog pressed close. But inside, in that space, between the storm and the ground, Ava's voice carried them through. The jets followed her path, and the storm could not take them. The storm kept its grip on the valley with a force that felt almost personal, as if it meant to challenge the resolve of all who dared to fly within its reach. Rain lashed at the F16s with such ferocity that the sound of it filled the cockpits, a constant drumming that blurred the line between machine and sky. The jets shuddered under the assault, their frames tested by the weight of wind and water. The air smelled of ozone and steel, of storm and strain, though none of it could be sensed directly, only felt through the trembling of the aircraft, the flickering of instruments, and the steady voice that guided them. Ava's voice. It cut through the crackling static of the radio, clear and sure despite the storm's best efforts to drown it out. Her words carried the weight of precision. Falcon 1, reduce altitude to 3,000, heading 045. Stay level. The terrain is clear beneath you to the next ridge. She spoke as one who had walked the ground below, who had traced every fold of the valley in her mind so often that she no longer needed sight to see. The map she followed now was one built not of charts alone, but of quiet study, of hours spent preparing for a moment no one else believed would come. The lead pilot answered, his voice tight but steadier than before. 045, 3,000. Copy. His breath caught, but the edge of fear had dulled. Falcon 2 followed with less certainty, the strain heavy in his tone. Same heading, same altitude. Fuels at fumes. Ava. We cannot circle again. The words hung in the air like the storm itself, heavy with the truth of the stakes. But Ava did not falter. Her mind was locked on the path forward, her thoughts measured to match each second as it passed. Outside the tower, the rain came harder, if that was possible, hammering at the glass until it seemed the storm would break through. The wind howled around the structure, a voice of its own, wailing against the metal and concrete as if angry at being defied. The runway lights were hidden still, their promise waiting behind the final curtain of fog. But Ava saw them in her mind's eye, saw the jets as they would be, wheels down, safe at last. Between that vision and the present stood only endurance, only precision. The jets rocked in the turbulence, gusts slamming at them, trying to shove them from the sky. Falcon 1's voice returned, louder now as the wind shoved against his aircraft. We're getting knocked around up here. Ava, can you tighten the vector? She answered without pause. Adjust heading 047. Reduce descent rate by 10 feet per second. That will take you clear of the worst of it. Falcon 2. Mirror the change. You are within safe altitude margin. The commands came smooth, her voice steady, anchored in knowledge, in preparation. The radio crackled as the pilots complied. The fear in their voices edged now with something else trust. The storm might rage, but the path was becoming clearer with each instruction. Falcon 1 reported the shift holding. Falcon 2 echoed him, though fuel levels remained a ghost at his shoulder, whispering of limits. The jets pressed on, fighting the storm with every turn of the turbines, every tilt of the control surfaces, but holding because Ava made it possible. Within the control room, no one spoke. The noise that had filled it before the arguing, the second-guessing was gone, replaced by the sound of the storm and the voice that now guided the mission. The senior staff watched, silent, as Ava worked, their authority set aside by the simple fact that hers was the only plan that held. The screens glowed with flickering blips, radar returns that faded and returned. But those blips moved as they should now, on a line Ava had drawn with her mind. Minutes passed that felt like an hour. Ava called out each change with care, adjusting headings by degrees, altitudes by feet, every choice exact. Falcon 1 reported ground contact on instruments. Falcon 2 confirmed. The valley floor waited beneath them, unseen, but close now. The final stretch of storm to pass before the lights could break through. The jets flew low, engines straining, frames shuddering. But the course was true. The storm had not beaten them yet. Then, at last, through the final veil of fog, the runway lights appeared, first as a faint glow, blurred by the storm, then sharper, brighter, as the jets came in line with the strip. The pilots saw them, called them out, relief, plain in their voices. Ava guided them the rest of the way, her words steady to the final confirmation. Falcon 1, you are lined up. Begin final descent. Falcon 2, follow spacing protocol. The danger was not yet past, but hope had arrived. The invisible path had been made real by quiet courage, by preparation carried through the storm. The jets came on, trusting the voice that had brought them home, carried not by noise or command, but by steady hands and steadfast heart. The storm still raged, but its test had been met. The lights of the base burned through the night, a promise kept at last. The storm eased its grip at last, the rain falling in a lighter rhythm, no longer the hammering assault it had been through the long night. The fog began to thin, retreating from the field it had claimed for so many hours. Lights along the runway, blurred for so long, now shone through the final mist in soft halos. The roar of engines filled the air, steady and familiar, as the first of the F16s touched down. The wheels met the wet tarmac with a hiss of steam. The aircraft steady, despite the storm's lingering breath. The second jet followed, a beat behind, both guided by the path that had been marked for them by a voice no one had expected to lead. The control room, once loud with command and confusion, fell silent. Eyes that had darted from screen to screen now held steady on the windows, watching the jets slow, taxi to the apron, and come to a stop. The canopies lifted, the cockpits filling with the soft light of the base as it re-emerged from the storm. Steam rose from the skins of the aircraft where the rain met the heat of their engines, curling into the air in slow, pale spirals that faded into the night. The storm's final drops fell on steel and glass and concrete, the last touch of a test endured. The pilots did not raise their voices. There was no fanfare, no need for words in the moment. One lifted a gloved hand from the canopy's edge, palm open in a gesture of thanks, simple and true. The other turned toward the tower, helmet lifted free, face drawn, with strain and relief, and nodded once, the motion clear even through distance and rain. The message needed no speech. They had been brought home, and they knew by whom. In the room above, The senior controller stood still, the weight of the moment clear on his face. The protests and commands that had filled the air hours before were gone now, replaced by the truth of what had passed. He crossed to Ava's console, the sound of his steps small in the hush. His voice was low, steady, meant for no one but her. I was wrong. The words carried no flourish, no apology dressed in pride, just truth, spoken where it mattered. His gaze met hers, and in that look was respect, earned not through argument, but through action. Ava nodded once, the motion small but certain. She reached to the console, powered down the systems with hands as steady as they had been through the storm's worst. The headset came free, the link between courage and action now set aside. She placed it gently on the desk, the tool that had bridged voice to choice resting in stillness. Around her, the room stayed quiet. The storm's rage was gone, and with it the noise that had hidden the strength among them. She crossed the room, each step measured, unhurried, the air filled with the soft hum of machines and the memory of what had been done. The door opened to the night beyond, the drizzle cool on her face, the scent of rain and jet fuel mingling on the breeze. The storm's last breath touched the base with a gentler hand now, the darkness clearing at the edges where dawn waited beyond the hills. Ava stepped onto the tarmac, the ground beneath her boots firm, the world at peace after the trial of the storm. The runway stretched before her, the stage where respect had been earned without demand, where victory had spoken through deed alone. The storm's end had cleared the doubt that once filled the room, left behind only the truth seen in silence. The greatest victories, Ava knew, spoke not in noise, but in what remained when the noise was gone. The jets stood quiet now, their work done, as the night gave way to morning light. Ava walked on, leaving the storm behind, the path before her clear. You have followed the journey of Ava, a woman who stood quiet while others spoke over her, who watched and prepared while others dismissed her. In the storm's darkest hour, when plans failed and voices faltered, she stepped forward. With no title to grant her command, with no spotlight to seek, she guided others home with the strength that comes from knowing, not boasting. Her story reminds us that true worth is not given by rank or recognition. It is built in the choices we make when no one expects us to rise. Quiet courage changes everything. Take a moment to reflect on what silent strengths you carry in your own life. Share your thoughts in the comments, and follow for more stories of those who stand strong in the shadows and bring others safely through the storm. The world is waiting for voices like Ava's.